So Run Disney weekends are coming up in January. And if you want all the details from people who have actually done races every year for the last 12 years, we have you covered.
To all who come to our happy place, welcome to the No Guilt Disney podcast, where we have no guilt about our love for all things Disney, and especially Run Disney, because you guys know that is our specialty and our favorite.
We are three Disney fangirls who probably know more about the Disney parks than most grown women should, and we're perfectly okay with that.
And there's actually three of us today.
Three! Hey, look, we told y'all we'd get it together at some point, and so here we are. We're together.
I mean, we do not promise to have it together for long, but we got it together once.
Hey, we're ending 2023 with a bang, okay?
So true.
The three podcast hosts actually on screen together. It's your belated Christmas present, Hanukkah present, Kwanzaa present, whatever you want to call it, right? So here we are.
The fact that I don't have to explain that we're three people, but there's only two of us on screen or on voice, like every time, is so nice.
And for me, not having to remember your line.
Right? That's what happens at the end of the podcast. I'm always like, oh, and then Theresa says.
Yes. Or me being like, wait, I give her so much grief about not remembering the email. What's the email?
Yep. Don't worry, I'll forget it in 45 minutes.
Yeah. Same hot mess, same familiar faces. It's good to see you guys, though. I'm glad we're all three back together for this one. Because it's also exciting, because it's a Run Disney episode, and Theresa doesn't usually get to participate, want to participate, have anything to participate about. But y'all, that's all going to change here in a couple of weeks.
Yes, not even a couple of weeks. 1 week.
1 week. That's right. We're like Ooh. There, knocking on that door, aren't we? Woo.
Yes.
Okay. Let's do some introductions, and then we'll jump into the content that we got for you today.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Theresa, and you can find me on all socials at Gertie the Dino.
My name is Jane, and you can find me on Instagram at RealMouseWifeWDW.
Hey, y'all, I'm Patty Holiday from the No Guilt universe, which is NoGuiltDisney.com. No Guilt Fangirl, No Guilt Life, and No Guilt Travel. Yeah, that's us. And you can find me on all socials at No Guilt Life. And we are going to do some rundowns about some things that we have noticed with the event guide and the upcoming races. Now, as a refresher for anybody who's just tuning in, this is the Run Disney race weekends. This is marathon weekend and the first Disneyland Half Marathon weekend in 7+ years. Seven. Like when they told us they were going on hiatus, some of us thought that was never coming back. Some of us thought it was coming back like in 2 years. Like it couldn't be. They're not really going to kill off Run Disney at Disneyland, are they? 7? 7 was a long time. It's been a hot minute.
Technically, it's 6. It's between 6 and 7. We haven't hit 7 yet because we went from 17. Well,
up.
You know, I like to say it's 6 because Reputation is the 6th album. And I feel like it's an Easter egg for Reputation being announced.
We made it 4 minutes before there's a Taylor Swift reference. Just if anybody's counting at home.
Listen, I went with the Disneyland Half Marathon shirt today, but my other shirt, Theresa.
I had mine right here.
I almost wore my Reputation shirt and with the iconic.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, girl. Anywho, okay. So yeah, we'll get the Swiftiness out of the way. All right.
We won't. It'll come back.
Well, Jane's here, so of course it will. All right. So first of all, we're going to talk a little bit about Walt Disney World Marathon weekend. This is the big granddaddy. This is the big deal. And I know there's a lot of first timers out there. There's a lot of folks who are doing their first marathon, their first Dopey, their first Goofy, first half marathon. We got Theresa doing her first half marathon. Before we start getting too deep into anything, and we're going to circle back for more details, but I literally want to know, besides the obvious of the Gertie artwork, why are you doing this? What made you decide that you wanted to do a half marathon?
Girl, Yes. Why?
Sure. I honestly, it was the Gertie artwork that pushed me over the edge. They put her in the, she's in the three, the bottom of the three for the half. And so I was like, in the off chance that she is on the medal or that she is somewhere else around, I was like, I have to do it. But I'll say this is actually, it's going to be a really emotional race for me, more than I thought it would be when I registered. I'll say doing a half has always kind of been a bucket list item, but one of those where I'm like, I'll get to it. It'll happen. I did not feel particularly pressed about going after it, mostly out of the training. I'm not a big runner, so I wasn't sure about doing it. But then shortly after the last marathon weekend, there is someone named Ian who had participated in basically every race weekend, did every single race, every Run Disney race weekend, and he passed away shortly after marathon weekend last year. So one of the reasons I'm running this race is in honor of Ian, knowing that there's a lot of people expecting to see him out on the course or wishing he was there. So this is my way of honoring him. And then over the summer, sorry, trying not to cry. Over the summer, my grandfather had also passed away, and he actually ran his very first marathon when he was in his 60s. So as kind of like a late add-on, I'm doing the half, kind of honoring both of them. Ian being that, just his excitement about Run Disney and these distance races, kind of honoring that. And for my grandfather, there is no age that's too old to kind of check something off your list or learn something new. So I'm running for them. I'm going to have their little pictures on the inside of my bib. I already have that planned out. So knowing that they're doing it with me. But yeah, like I said, Gertie pushed me over the edge because she was
this episode's
there.
over.
But I know it's going to be an emotional race for a lot of reasons.
I only knew Ian through Twitter, but he was an amazing ambassador for the Run Disney community and a very much beloved guy. And I just remember when I saw that information come across my feed, like just the gut check. And it was just a reminder, like, you never know, because he was out running the weekend before, perfectly healthy, but you never know. So yeah, no, that's a great reason. And I think that, I think Run Disney is going to come through for you. I think, you'll also have some ups and downs on the course because that happens. But speaking of the courses, we are going to talk a little bit about some changes from previous years. So if you are a longtime Run Disney person, Jace, these are just some basic heads up. First of all, Theresa, you are going to be saved from this long, stupid walkout to the corrals that they've always made us do. So for the half marathon and the marathon, there's always been like this extra mile that they make you hike out to. And then on top of that, in the past 2 years, they included like this extra mile to do the security situation now, because you go all the way from the parking lot through Epcot and then back to where you just were in the parking lot to get started. And so what we noticed is that starting with Wine and Dine this year, they had made that change. It looks like they're sticking with this change. They're not making any changes based off of what happened at Wine and Dine. So the corralling situation is going to, again, be all together in the parking lot like it is with the 5 and the 10K. The problem is, and something that folks just need to be aware of, if you are in some of the back corrals for the marathon or the half marathon, it gets a little dicey, it gets a little weird. And there was a lot of complaints because apparently the space that they put you in isn't very accessible in some ways. Like they couldn't hear through the speakers. So they were hoping that maybe they fixed that for these races.
It looks like rather than just being the last group, it's the last 2 groups because it goes up to F.
Yes. So that, just as a warning, those that are in those later corrals, your start is possibly going to be a little bit more chaotic than you wish it would be. But I think if you know that going in and you're prepared for that mentally, like that will help you hopefully a little bit, maybe lower some of your stress. But that's just something to be aware of. It calms down by the time you actually get in line and you line up and they do your fireworks and you go across the finish line or across the start line. But while you're waiting, and unfortunately those back corrals end up having to wait a long time. there's a lot of anxiety that happens back there. And so I just wanted to give you guys a warning about that. The good news is you don't have to add an extra mile to your race. The bad news is you might have some thoughts while you're standing.
You might be starting your race with a sprint to
you
the
might,
actual
you
corral.
might, yeah, because it's weird. It's and visibly, like I've looked at the map. I didn't go and see the corrals at the half marathon for Wine and Dine, so I'm not visually exactly sure what happened. But looking at the map, I can see where the complaint could be and how it could be a problem. So I get that. All we can say is voice your situation to Run Disney so that maybe in future races they're not going to change anything for this race, but maybe in future races they will change things. So that's the good news, bad news about that. One thing to note, you should try to get to Epcot by 4 a.m. for all the races. They do shut down roads for some of the races by a certain amount of time. So if you're thinking you're going to drive in, cruise in at 4:30, park, and walk over to your corral, no, you're not going to get in. So make sure that you get there by 4. Corrals, Jane, you wanted to talk about corrals.
Yeah, so I've been getting a lot of questions from people asking where they can find their corral. And the answer is you can't. So you will find your corral when you pick your bib up, and it will be in the corner of the bib, because someone said, how do I know once I pick it up? Well, it's right there. It'll give you that letter, and that tells you where you're going to start. So it's a little bit different from in the past where you would be able to get your corrals ahead of time, where they used to post like a little infographic with that information on it. Now they make you wait until you get there. You can sometimes estimate, based upon getting your bib number, which will come on your expo pass in your email approximately 2 days before the expo. So, even from now, people are going to say, oh, I didn't get this, I didn't get that. Well, 2 days before. They wait until the very last minute. I think it's partially because people get, anxious and they have questions, and then they start bombarding Run Disney, and this is a very hectic time of year for them. So they kind of wait until the last minute, and they're like, any issues, questions, whatever, you can take it up with them at the expo. There's a runner relations booth. So that's that information.
I
Back to
do
you, Bob.
have I do have on my website, and I'll link it down here in show notes, estimated corrals, along with a link back to the last time Run Disney gave us the corrals. If you like to play the game of what ifs or, possiblies or whatever, all of this is caveated that there's somebody in one of the Run Disney Facebook groups who puts this information together, and he's very clear up front. It's a hot mess. Like it's not exact. So you have to go with the flow when it comes to corralling, trying to guesstimate in advance. Because when they changed the proof of time requirements, it also kind of messed up how reliably we can guess where you're going to end up, because it is a guess. A lot of it is very much, it appears to be kind of randomized with certain bibs. And we don't have an answer as to, we don't know what happens in the back end. We don't know how they set things up. We don't know how this comes out, but I'm thinking it could be like maybe last minute people that signed up, or last minute charity folks who got a bib and they submit their proof of time, which then gives them a higher bib number because bib numbers have already been assigned, but they have the proof of time and the speed to be in a better corral. So their high number ends up in a good corral, which makes us all go, what's happening here? That shouldn't be right. Answer is, unfortunately, Run Disney has chosen not to give us that information in advance like they used to. Again, I have it all for historical purposes on my website. If you want to go and look for event guides, corrals, and maps for any race, like all the way back to probably 2013, I think I have them all, including for Disneyland races. But just know that that doesn't necessarily equate to what you're going to see this weekend or any Run Disney weekend.
No, and it's a math issue, which I know Patty loves when I bring math into the equation here at Disney. but the mix can change every time. So if we get, if there's 10,000 runners and it's evenly spread out, then it's easy for us to say, okay, this is kind of where everybody goes in the buckets. But if there's 10,000 runners and 9,000 of them are Boston Marathon qualifiers, then everyone is fast. And you know what that means? Not everyone is going to be in the first corral. So they're going to have to spread them out more evenly. So it really is just about the mix of who registers. And if you've survived a Run Disney registration in the last 2 years, you know that registration is a crapshoot. So we really don't know the mix that we're getting.
Yeah. Theresa, do you want to address your corral situation? Because you guys kind of got hosed, I think.
Yes, and it's still a lot of question marks. So for those who aren't aware, I am registered as an athlete with disabilities, and that has been, I want to say, a headache over the last couple of race weekends from what I've heard. And it's largely a problem because, can I start back? So the registration for this race weekend was April 11th. Springtime Surprise weekend started on April 13th. And for anybody registering as athletes with disabilities for this race cycle, we're all doing it under the idea of how historically the athletes with disabilities would all be in the same corral together that would go between the B and C corrals. So everybody, when they were registering, they were kind of doing it, all right, that's what I need to know. I don't have to worry about having my proof of time, or when you're trying to estimate what your finish time will be, not as crucial a part of your registration.
Right.
You're trying to make sure you get the accommodations pieces in there. Starting with unofficially at Springtime Surprise was when they stopped allowing all athletes with disabilities into that corral. It was not communicated well during that event, but when it came into Wine and Dine, they were very clear, Track Shack, when they were sending out the emails, that it was, unless you have that gold sticker on there indicating you're allowed to be in the AWD corral, which primarily has just been people who are using wheels for racing. So whether that's the hand cycle or wheelchair racers, and everybody else, you would be put into the corral based on your finish time. So you were with people doing the same pace as you. And obviously that's brought up a lot of questions and frustration. I heard that somebody from Run Disney had said, well, we didn't know that nobody had ever requested these accommodations to be put into that corral before. So we didn't know that that's something that they actually needed as part of their accommodations. So for this process, kind of went, and when I got the email from Track Shack to confirm who my running guide is, I sent the email to them and said, hey, here's my running guide. In addition, I want to make sure, if I can be in that AWD corral, because I heard at Wine and Dine, there were a lot of issues with people who were in the holding pen for corrals trying to get to their actual spot because of how crowded it was.
Yep.
I heard of issues with when people are, they have the cold weather gear that they're putting on before the race, kind of leaving that within the earlier corrals. So again, issues trying to navigate around people's clothing items, and generally just not being able to, for people with guides, being able to communicate with their guide to successfully start the race.
In your case, you could easily trip over stuff that's just left on the ground with the anxiety and the people trying to move and whatever. Yeah, I can totally picture where your concern lies.
Yeah, so kind of sent all that in the email to Track Shack, and Track Shack's response was, hey, you should send these accommodations requests to Run Disney. I'm like, all right, I can do that. That's fine. Sent basically the same email to Run Disney, got a message back being like, we're working on it. And that's the last I've heard from Run Disney. Got another email from Track Shack reiterating that you have to be in your assigned corral. And spoken with somebody else in a similar situation who was told by Run Disney, basically, argue your case at Expo.
Okay.
So right now, a lot of us are feeling frustrated because it seems like neither side, Run Disney or Track Shack, wants to take responsibility for this and keep passing it back and forth to each other. And none of us will really know until we get there what we are going to be experiencing race morning. As a first-time half marathoner, definitely feeling anxious about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure things will work out fine, hopefully. But yeah, it's one of those, in addition to everybody else kind of wondering where they're going to be, there's a lot of us in this situation who really have no idea where we're going to be or how it's going to impact our race. I think the start of the race more so than the overall race experience. But I'm one of those people, I know pretty early on, how I'm going to do for a race, and the start has a lot to do with that. So fingers are crossed. We'll see what happens, but yes, it's still a lot of question marks about kind of how that race weekend is going to go for the AWD athletes.
Okay, well,
did you get to choose your guide, or did they choose it for you?
You have either option. If you know somebody who has registered for the race, you can put in their name and they kind of confirm and make sure, hey, this person has to be registered. They do say if you need a guide, and the guides are just for people with visual and hearing disabilities. But they say, like, if you need one and don't have somebody, I think you have to give them like 90 days notice, so that way they can work with you to find somebody.
Got it.
But I have somebody who runs every single race weekend, so I knew she would be willing to do it. So that, like I said, everybody's double checked who my guide is to make sure that we both have the correct bibs. I'll say my guide she's doing every race during the race weekend, so I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do that with her corral for the half. If assuming that she's a very fast runner, she's a Club Run Disney person, so she'll definitely have a good corral spot for both reasons. But we will. Yeah, I think we both have questions about how her corral will be assigned for the half and kind of what we're doing
and what that means for you. Like,
yes,
yeah. Well, I think what I hear, or what I personally am just most disappointed in, is that nobody wants to take the ownership for this very big change of policy, right? Like, somebody just needs to say,
and
this is what we're doing, and this is how we're going to fix it or not fix it or whatever.
It's not being communicated well. And even the email from Track Shack, maybe I shouldn't say this, but it says like, this is confidential information and should not be publicly posted anywhere. And I know somebody else who was trying to find information about the AWD process to help somebody else register for an upcoming race. And it's just, there's not much information on the Run Disney website out there at all. So, and I think some of that's because it's changing so much over the past year. They don't want to say something that's going to change by the time the race weekend comes around. But it does feel like just kind of go a lot of back and forth. And I'm hoping that, like, this is my first time kind of running a race with this experience. So I'll have better feedback to give them afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I wish that it was just more straightforward when you were kind of in this situation and just knowing what to expect, but like going into, especially such a, if it's your first time doing a distance race, or if you're doing multiple races, athletes with disabilities generally do have other things they need to be concerned about when they're kind of prepping themselves for a race, and kind of going into it knowing that you're not going to have this stress over where am I starting. It would be helpful, but I know that's not everybody. Nobody has that question answered about where they starting prior to the race.
Yeah,
so,
that's true. You're just like everybody else now.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, keep us posted, because obviously
we'll find out.
circle.
Maybe it might go better than expected, but
we'll circle back. And
I'll share a lot when we record after the race.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm doing the 5K. Jane, are you doing the half, or have you decided?
I'm doing the half.
You are, for sure. Okay, I just wasn't 1,000% sure if that was still a thumbs up or not.
Like, if it turns out that it's like 90 degrees, which currently the weather is not, but Florida, but like if it's like, oh, it's 90 degrees, I'll probably be like, nah, I'm good. I'll skip it. And I'm totally that person. And everybody's going to be like, oh my God, you registered and took a spot. And I did. And I did because of the Coast to Coast medal. And then they showed me something that looks like a Wonka candy bar. And I was like, this is what I'm running Coast to Coast for. I absolutely could sleep in on Saturday and be okay.
That was why I asked, because I knew
it is a Wonka candy bar.
I know the Coast to Coast medal was very disappointing for like everyone. I don't hate it on its own, but compared to previous Coast to Coast medals, I'm not a fan. Girl,
it's hideous.
It's cute.
It's hideous. It is hideous on its own. It is hideous. It's laid against every single Run Disney medal for the last 15 years. And we've had some that are just, it's hideous. It is lazy. Lazy.
I don't find the rectangle one as bad, like at the round one. I don't love that one, but I'll say the funniest comparison I heard to somebody else referenced was that it looks like a ransom note because of like the cutout letter.
That's funny.
That is pretty funny. Wonka bar ransom note. All right. So that's where we stand on that. Real quick on the maps. I took a look. it looks like the 5K, the 10K, the half are essentially the same maps that we've had for previous races. So if you've done this before, similar-ish, right? Like nothing super crazy, except your half marathon, you've got like this extra loop, which means an extra overpass early on in the race to make up for not having to do that big walkout is what I think that's how they made up that extra mile. No?
No. Because the walkout, well, no, I guess I see what your point is. No, I think there's also like it goes into Epcot first and then comes out, and then you do this extra overpass. I think it's just because of the way that the roads are now up at Magic Kingdom. So like the way that you wind up like scooting around over there takes away some mileage.
Some extra distance over there.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. You'll also, if you are marathoning, you are going to be able to run by Tron, which sounds great, but underneath Tron, where they're going to have you run through, is actually a pinch point. It's not a very wide open section. So you are, depending on where you are in the pack, I just want to give that heads up that, as a marathoner, you might be narrowed down and walking under Tron. But it should all be lit up and it should be really cool, pretty at night. So we're in the morning.
Well, and I'm hoping,
that'll be a fun photo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I'm hoping for the half, because like the last Run Disney race I did was the 5K during Wine and Dine, not this past year, but the one before. We did not get Spaceship Earth lit up when we were running during the 5K.
Yeah. I remember.
I'm very excited.
I remember.
It's going to be bright. Like it's already going to be light by the time I'm in Epcot for the half, so it's fine. But I'm hoping to get my pretty ball.
Yeah. No,
you'll at least get it at the beginning when you walk from the car and go through security. It'll definitely be lit up.
It'll be lit up, so you'll get to see it then. So that was still so weird. Like, who forgot to turn on flip the switch?
The person that made the coast to coast medal.
That person.
I'm just saying.
Just saying. Okay, and then Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom, all that looks normal. I had somebody asking about rides on the course, and this is just as a reminders and FYI, half marathoners for 1 year, and wasn't it last year? I think it was last year. Surprise, surprise, they actually had in Magic Kingdom, the teacups were running and the carousel was running. It's never happened before. We don't know if it'll happen again, but like pretty cool experience to have that, because it's, again, we have done a zillion half marathons between us, Jane, and it's never that the ride option was never an option for a half marathoner. For the marathoners, if you're running, you do have some options to jump on some rides during the race. If you happen to be in the parks when the parks are open, they won't turn these rides on for you early or anything like that. So if you're super fast, speedy legs, you're going to miss Everest. If you happen to be there by 8:30, 9 o'clock, you could go through the single rider line. That's usually where they funnel the runners through, and you could ride a roller coaster in the middle of your half marathon, or I'm sorry, in the middle of your marathon, not your half marathon. Other rides that people sometimes like to try to do: Tower of Terror, Rock and Roller Coaster. I've seen Frozen, but I think that one has a much longer line, so I would not suggest jumping into that one ever. Grand Fiesta. I've seen Test Track, and I've seen people get virtual queues for Guardians of the Galaxy, and they rode that one. Now, the only thing I will tell you about that is that's going to take up 20, 25 minutes of your time, just the way the queue works. Like, you're going to be in line for a long time if you're going to try to ride Guardians, but this is part of the Disney experience that you can only get at Disney. So if that's what you're interested in, those are kind of the rides that are on the route for the marathon that you may want to consider jumping in for.
This is an interesting question. I'm kind of curious. So if you were to try to do the virtual queue for Guardians, I guess number one, I assume that means you have to have a park pass that day.
Correct.
But can you do it if you don't tap into the park? If you're Magic Band, if you don't tap into the park, is there any issues with going through?
Interesting.
There isn't, but when you run over by, depending upon, and I'm not really sure exactly where the course comes in, this go round, but if it comes in the back, I've seen people run over and tap in at the international gateway just to get back on course. And they've literally said, I need to tap in because I have a Guardians virtual queue.
Yep. No,
that's your option if you're going to do something like that, or even like if you're going to grab Genie Plus for something,
Lightning Lane
that would be your option. Yeah. It would be that you would have to tap into that park.
And I actually do. I have one change that I'm aware of on the half, because as I've been doing some of my treadmill running, I found a YouTube channel who does like their actual races on the course. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I was running with when I was doing my long races, just to get a sense of, approximately what the half would be like. And I did notice that in their video from last year, from 2023, when they were running through Magic Kingdom, you kind of went on the front side of Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. Mm-hmm. And this one, it has you going on the back side where you're crossing between Seven Dwarfs and the Little Mermaid area. Yeah. So it's like I said, it's a minor change, but I was like, that does put you by another attraction. And I'm kind of curious, like, why they shifted from one side to the other there. But yeah, that was somebody who has not done this. That is the change that I noticed.
Yeah, no,
it's Tron. That's the reason. Because of the Tron path, where the Tron path takes you underneath, it comes around behind. For those of you who've been going to Disney for a really long time, it's where they used to have a treat trail at Halloween and the Smokers Alley. And so it goes all the way behind Storybook Circus, back by the train, and then it comes back up. So I think when you come out of Storybook Circus, rather than looping you towards Teacups and coming in the front of Snow White, they take you through the back by Gaston's and come up that way.
And there's 2 more bathrooms there, so win for everybody.
Bathrooms. We love bathrooms.
If you need bathrooms on the course, I've got Marathon has been updated. I will have to go look at the other races and get them updated for you, and I will do that today, I promise. So that those will be updated if you need bathrooms on the courses. And I do have Disneyland bathrooms on the courses for the half marathon as well. So that's already been updated. Real quick reminder for everybody that is running, you have to go to the expo. You have to show up and pick up your bib at the expo. You don't need a time or a virtual queue to pick up your bib, okay? You do need to get this it's called an expo pass, but essentially it's just like, that's just basically you've checked in and said, I signed my waiver. And so that you're going to show that on your phone to the volunteer when you pick up your bib. Did you forget to lock the door
my coffee
again?
maker?
Oh.
No, I thought it was the door. And I was like, what is happening? And then I realized it's my coffee maker that just did its final shut off. And
got it.
Sorry, guys. It freaked me out.
Well, I was a little concerned.
I mean, I didn't yell an expletive, so we're okay. But I was like,
what's happening?
This is it. This is how I go.
Live on the podcast. Anywho,
you know what? If someone comes to get me, at least there's video footage. Go ahead.
That's true. We have that one small nice thing to give to the police.
Yes.
Anywho, so yeah, your expo pass. Jane mentioned it 2 days before the expo. Well, technically, today is December 30th, and on the event guide, it says it's coming out today for Marathon Weekend. So
really,
that's what it says. It doesn't always do that, but we have gotten some emails from runDisney on Saturdays recently, which is weird. Normally, that's not their day to send emails, but we have had some for this race weekend. Or not this race weekend, this race year so far. So that's something to keep an eye out. Any day now, you should be getting an email that says, go get your expo pass. Literally, you're just going to go in and click a button and then take a screenshot of that. That's what you show when you go to pick up your bib. Old school runDisney, you had to hand sign a waiver and you handed them over this waiver. They're just doing it digitally now. So that's the difference. If you're an old school runDisney person who hasn't run since COVID, this is one of the changes that they made. Expo passes are really not anything to get crazy over. I will link in the show notes information about going to get your stuff from the expo and what you need to know. The only other thing you do need to know is if you're going to purchase merchandise on the first day and first day only. You do need to get a virtual queue for the merchandise area. And that is going to be through your app, and it goes open at 8:30 in the morning on January the 3rd, and you will be assigned a time to come in and do your shopping. Sounds more complicated than it needs to be.
The one thing that
It
is
is.
different about the virtual queue for the expo versus like any other virtual queue is you have to be within 45 miles, I think, of the
Yes.
park.
Yes.
And like one of the reasons I know this is because my friend always comes over the night before, because I think she lives like 52 miles away and she's like, I'm not willing to take a chance. So if you are flying in that morning, you should know that like if you're not here, you're probably not going to be able to access it. Whereas like with Guardians or something, you know, you could access that, you know, while you're in the airport in DC or wherever
Yep.
you're flying from, and can't do that with the Expo Pass. So get some
Correct.
friends that are local here and they will grab you some Expo Passes. Also, if you're going to go on that first day after like 4 o'clock-ish, they don't ask for the virtual queue anymore.
Yeah, you
So
can just walk in.
Yeah, so if you're coming later in the day, don't worry about it. And obviously any other day other than the first day, you're good.
Yeah. Theresa, are you a weather watcher? Are you looking at the weather?
Yes. A lot of that just out of, I do have like slight modifications for my outfit if based on like temperature. But I just haven't done much running in the rain. I don't really care for it. And especially after most of my 5Ks have been in the rain, and that has impacted the number of characters I've ever been able to see.
That's
So
right.
I'm basically just looking at precipitation percentages and hoping for the best.
Okay. Are you telling us what you're going to wear for your costume?
I think that's fine. So I am doing Daisy. I figured I would keep it simple, partially because she is on the medal. So I'm
Yep.
like,
Yep.
I'll
Yep.
get some cute pictures. She's guaranteed to be on the course because she's on the medal. But also, it's just one of the running tops that I have is like a mauve color. So I figured I already have that. I'm comfortable wearing it. That's what I need. I just need something that I can run comfortably in and train
Yep.
in. So actually, I did 5 miles this morning and I did my full outfit for the first time. And like I said, it went really well, so I'm looking forward to it. But yes, nothing too out there. I just wanted to make sure that I felt good, ran in stuff that I could run in at home,
Yep.
and then yeah, I want to make this experience as smooth as I possibly can.
Listen, you cannot go wrong with wearing the costume of the character that the race is
Exactly.
themed around. So, no notes. Good job there. That's exciting, and we can't wait to see it. Okay, so whether it looks like it's going to be, Jane, freezing cold for Floridians, but okay for everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it looks glorious because I like things absolutely freezing. Rain will be interesting. So far, I'm seeing that it's going to be rain during the day, not necessarily the morning. I will tell you right now that if it is going to rain and pour in the morning, I will be sleeping in and going to breakfast as if I ran a half marathon.
Understood.
Yeah.
I did
Because
buy
that
a
coast to
Mylar
coast
hoodie for the
metal.
first time because I was like, I just to have because I did not have one.
Yep.
I've borrowed some ones from previous races. I was like, no, I need to bring my own.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's not a bad idea to have, and hopefully you just don't need, and you can move on from there. So, okay. We are going to bounce to Disneyland and talk a little bit about what we know and what we don't know for the Disneyland races, because this is exciting. And we also know, between me traveling, Theresa traveling, Jane maybe sleeping in or running her half marathon. Anyway, we're not going to be able to get together before the next race to talk about just Disneyland on its own. So we're going to talk a little bit about it right now. Theresa, if you have any questions about Disneyland, obviously I know you're not going to this race, but if you have any questions or anything to chime in, then feel free to throw that at us. As a reminder, depending on your math, 6 years/7 years since the last Run Disney event at Disneyland. That was the Avenger. Well, it wasn't Avengers. It was called Superheroes Half Marathon Weekend in 2017. And I stayed until the bitter end. I was holding signs up for the half marathon right at the end of that race. And I just remember like the feelings that we all had as it was ending. And it was sad because a lot of us really loved running at Disneyland. Now, with the maps that have come out, apparently just proving that nobody listens to me, I've been telling you guys it's the mullet race, right? Like it is a combination of things, but I've heard so many complaints about how disappointed they are in this map for the half marathon in particular, because what they don't understand is just Disneyland and Disney World are just two separate animals, right? So you are going to get what I think is the best of both worlds as a runner, not as a Disney runner. Like I understand there's a Disney runner and then there's, that as a runner, you get the best of both worlds. You get all this Disney park time and you will cover like all the ground that you can cover at Disneyland. Have you taken a look at these maps at all, Theresa?
I did, because one of the things I noticed, like, you get significantly more park time for
You
the
do.
Disneyland half than you do for the Walt Disney World half, which, again, makes sense because of proximity, how close they
Yep.
are together. But yes, I did see that. I had slight jealousy over that.
Hey, Halloween half marathon weekend coming up, Theresa. If you want that coast to coast medal, if you want that ransom note medal,
You can
anywho.
have mine for free.
So I know people are complaining about it, but I am here to tell you, as somebody who's not a runner, like I only did run Disney races because the Disney draw, like that was my thing. I absolutely loved running these half marathons at Disneyland. I really did, because you could screw around and you could mess around. And you could take all these time. You could have 20-minute miles in the park, because once you got out on the road, you had plenty of space and availability and mileage to make up the time and be a little bit faster and actually like get a real run in and real experiences in. The other things that are really different between Disneyland and Disney World is you don't get characters out on those regular city streets, because those roads are not owned by Disney. They're not controlled by Disney. So they're not going to, put a princess out there. Okay. However, what they do is in the past, we'll have to see who they pull out this year or how this has happened. Because again, it's been like 6 to 7 years. Like we don't know, a lot of things have changed, but in the past, every mile, or I think it was about every mile, there was some kind of community experience of entertainment wise for you. So still every mile is magic. It just wasn't like Disney branded magic, right? But like there was groups of cosplayers. There were bands, there were car clubs, there were the Red Hat Society ladies, there were dancers, there was just all kinds of interesting things that the community in Anaheim really would come out. I have zero concept or idea because a lot of things have changed. So I don't know what's going to happen for this race. I hope Anaheim is there again, and I hope that is the case. The good news is also, from a spectator point of view, the city of Anaheim would come out, and at least in my expectation, if I was going to spectate on the streets of Anaheim, I'd have food, I'd have drinks, I'd have all those things, because Disney can't control that like they can at Walt Disney World. At Walt Disney World, they can tell you, this is our property and we can't allow you to hand things out. You telling me I can't do that in Anaheim? I don't know. I don't believe it. I would like to not believe it. I would like to think that that's still an okay. Like you might still see the group that does get the candy from strangers. Like that's what I'm hoping, is that you guys will still have those kinds of traditional opportunities, like to eat and drink all along the course. So that's my hope. If anyone from Anaheim is listening, let me know if you've heard anything different. If you've, if you are going to be one of those groups that are going to be out there, what Disney has told you or not told you about what you can or can't do. I would be very curious to know if anything like that has been communicated. But the good news is there is a lot of road space to make up some time to actually run. The bad news is once you leave the parks, you're not coming back to the Disney property for this race. Jane and I noticed that In the past, all of the races started like on Disney property. We were all queued up and set up, and we finished in the Disneyland parking lot, Disneyland Hotel parking lot. This year, they are starting and ending the races in a different Disney parking lot, but it's not like it's offsite. It's over by Harbor Boulevard. It's a little bit different. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind, is that those things are a little bit different than they were back in the day. So when people say, well, what does the staging look like? We don't know, because this is going to be a completely different setup than what we have experience with. The expo, however, is still going to be at the Disneyland Hotel. We did get that confirmation. But did you notice this, Jane, that it looks like there's no basement level this year?
I didn't look.
Okay. So in the past, you would go down this ramp into the basement and you'd get your bibs and your pre-purchased merchandise down there. Then you'd come up the ramp and go into like the big ballroom area for all the like regular merch and, expo stage and whatever. So this time it looks like we're not going to go down that ramp at all. We're going to actually get both levels of the conference center. So you're going to come in, and I think we're going to go up escalators to the top floor to pick up our bibs and our shirts, and then come down the escalators to the ballroom as we used to do in the past for like all the shopping and all of that good stuff. So it's a little bit different for anybody who ran Disneyland in the past. That is one difference that I noticed that we're going to be expecting. Again, same thing with Disney World. Everybody has to go to the expo. You have to pick your stuff up there. There is going to be that virtual queue. Their virtual queue is open at 7 a.m. because of course it is. Why would it not be the same time as Walt Disney World? Because it's Disneyland and they have to do everything differently from Disney World.
They like to keep us on our toes.
I'm telling you, it's crazy. So it's 7 a.m. Pacific time to sign into the virtual queue the first day of the expo if you want to go to the expo for that day. Also, the other thing to really know about Disneyland is they're going to charge you for parking for the expo and for the race, where Walt Disney World doesn't do that. So be prepared if you're coming from off-site, if you're local, if you're driving in, you're going to be paying for parking typically. But yeah. We also have yoga happening at Disneyland. This is the first time they've done that. So we don't know exactly what to expect, other than you're going to check in by 4:45 in the morning. You need to be checking in by 4:45 in the morning at one of the ticket booths. So it'll be easy. Just follow the crowd when you come into Disneyland. Yoga starts at 5. It ends by 6. And then you'll have plenty of time to get your virtual queue for your merchandise at 7. One other thing I noticed was that PhotoPass is going to be available for yoga. They didn't do that at Walt Disney World. I've done yoga at Disney World three times. I think I've done it 3 times. And there's never been a PhotoPass option. Yeah. So
Think of anything that I would rather have less than a photo of me and Downward Dog.
I
These
mean,
people.
you're not wrong. But also, like, you don't have a bib number or anything on you. So how are they going to assign that to you? So I think my visual is that the PhotoPass for yoga may be go stand in front of the castle in your little yoga outfit. You know what I mean? Like a posed picture, or maybe even
Characters.
picture.
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe there's
yeah.
1 or 2 character meet and greets.
That's what I think. And that's how we're going to get PhotoPass usage at yoga. So anyway, TBD, I'm going to yoga, so I will let you guys know what that looks like and how that is. The other big thing that we've not talked about either place, and I am going to put together a great big PhotoPass memory maker guide for you guys, because photos are always a question. How do you get photos? How does this work? Blah, 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 blah. Disneyland and Disney World do photos differently. Because again, of course they do. And
Surprise.
surprise. At Disneyland, there's a 1-day option There is a 1 week option. And then they also include photos, all photos, not just your ride photos, when you buy Genie Plus for the day. So, say you run the 5K at Disneyland on Friday, you go into the park and you buy Genie Plus that day, you'll be able to attach your bib and get your 5K photos included with your Genie Plus purchase. They don't do that at Disney World. Okay. So, it's just different. They don't have the one day. They don't have it, and they don't have it included with Genie Plus. So Disneyland is a little bit different. You have some options there to get your race photos there. I think the 1 week option is like $78.
Yeah.
So if you're going for 3 races, like $78 will get you all of your photos, plus any park photos that you might go and do. There's also kids races at the Disneyland Half Marathon weekend. That whole shebang, it says the activity zone is going to open at 9:00 in the morning, but then the first races, they're going to start with the youngest races. No, I take that back. They're going to start with the 1 to 3-year-old races, but then they're ending with the diaper dashers at 11.
That makes sense.
So, yeah. So, like, they're going to go 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 9, and then the diaper dashes at the end. But all the kids races should be done by 11:30. So if you want to plan your day on Saturday, if you're running the 10K and then sticking around for the kids races because you got your kids signed up for it, then you're not going to be done with stuff until 11-ish, 11:30-ish thought process. Anything else Disneyland, Jane, that you think we need to call out or point out or mention? A lot of this, we kind of feel like we wish we could prepare you better, but we don't know until we know.
Just that the virtual queue is the information does say you don't have to be within a distance of the Disneyland virtual queue. So it is different than Florida. It is required for the first day. So if you're going to be there and you want to get into merch, regardless of what time, you should definitely get it. You know, of course, they could potentially change that. And then the one thing I did read, which I think is a little bit different than we do in Florida, is that they will send one QR code for the whole group. So when you do virtual queue, it'll be like rides where you select like your whole party. And then in Florida, there's an individual QR code per person. And it looks like Disneyland says they're sending one QR code per group. So the reason that that's important is if you are used to Florida, or like we've done it in the past where we'll sign, a bunch of us up and then, 4 of us will go in because we got called. And then, 20 minutes later, our friends arrive, they can use their QR codes, even though we all signed up together. We can arrive, staggered and everybody can get in separately. This way you might not be able to. So I would say only sign up people that you are actually entering the expo with, because it says there's one QR code.
Good to know. The weather, I just looked, it's not going out very far, but Southern California is Southern California and it looks lovely. Like cold 46, high 65. Listen, every Disneyland race that was in January was my favorite Disneyland race. The weather was always perfect for running. It really was great. And it was always good for, going to the parks afterwards and being out and about, like just comfortable and great. So fingers crossed that we're getting some of that wonderful weather. It is the rainy season in January there. So we could get rain, but knock on all the wood, we won't, because we haven't in the past. So I'm hopeful that we'll still be good to go then.
But also pack like long sleeves. Like
it gets cold.
Make sure
it absolutely does.
Regardless of what race weekend you're doing, make sure that you're packing. Like Theresa had said, she has a couple of different options for her outfit based on weather. That is so important. Like I was talking to Patty and I was like, hey, I ordered us shirts. They're short sleeve, but here's what I'm going to do in terms of long sleeve for, my backup option or whatever. And then also bring something, if you can, something that you can toss away. So either go to Goodwill and buy some things at Goodwill, clean out your closet, great time of year to start that, and bring some things that you can toss. It also makes room in your suitcase to buy merch, which I love. And the other thing is, I found myself getting cold when I ran in January in Disneyland on course. So I will never forget how cold I was. It wasn't really that cold on course. Of course, I am from Florida. Well, I live in Florida. I'm not from Florida. That would be embarrassing for me. But I live in Florida, and so I tend to get a little bit cold. So I do remember how cold I was there. And so I'm determined to not be cold on course.
Okay. All that to be said, Theresa. Now, I really want to get into like your packing tips, your first timer experience. We already talked about the why and how you've gotten to this point. I know that you have actually you've trained, which listen, I'm not throwing shade at I'm not throwing shade at anybody when I say this, because no, for real. There's a lot of people that sign up for these things and then forget to train. Theresa's not one of those, everybody. She actually really had a plan. Now I have to ask, did you work with Chrissy? Because
no, because I didn't.
Okay.
So Chrissy Murphy, if you're in the Facebook group, you know Chrissy. So she actually, she has to be in Florida for something the following week. She got a last minute marathon bib. So she is now my roommate for marathon weekend. Super excited. But yeah, so when I initially signed up for the half, did not know she was going to be there, and that we would kind of be doing this race weekend together. But I did have somebody recommend, there's an app called Running with Hal. So it's the Hal Higdon kind of training plans, which I know is a popular one along with the Jeff Galloway. That one, I went with Hal Higdon because his training plan specifically does not have you doing a full half prior to the half. The Galloway one does. And just mentally, I wanted to be like, I want my first 13.1 miles to be actually like at the half. I think to me, it would just feel like more of an accomplishment in the moment. I am going back on that a little bit because I ended up doing 11 miles for my last long run rather than the 10 there. Because I was like, if I can do 11, I believe I can do 13. But there is still that small voice in the back that's like, you've never done 13 miles before.
You're fine.
It's back there. I think until I get it done, I'm just going to be a little anxious about it. I think that's normal.
Totally normal.
But before you did 11 miles that day, you'd never done 11 miles before.
I'd never done double digits.
Like, why won't you be able to do 13 miles, right? Like,
yeah.
My rule of thumb when I did do races, my training consisted of I added an extra mile to my long run every weekend. I never followed anybody's plan but Patty's plan, which is also why I had 4-hour half marathons. But my goal was always to hit 10 miles because that was my thought process too, was as long as I could hit the 10, I knew I could finish the 13. Like I could gut it out, right? Like
and looking at the course map, like that, I really decided to push it to 11 once I saw the course maps, because that gets you to the Epcot parking lot at the end, and that's when you see Spaceship Earth. So I was like, if I get to the Epcot parking lot and I know all I have left to do is run through Epcot, I was like, I can do that. Like that will just be like going into the park at the end of the day. So
it does, like it puts the wind back in your sails. Like when you run, because there's a downward ramp that you run into that Epcot parking lot. And that was my favorite. Like once they do this stupid curve thing, whatever, and you had to go up over this hill. But once you went down that hill, that was like I got this, I'm gonna finish. Like that was always so great. So yeah, you'll enjoy that feeling, especially because you love Epcot so much. So it'll be
and as soon as you go into Epcot, speaking of bathrooms on the course, rounding back out to that, the first bathroom as soon as you run into Epcot is by the Journey into Imagination bathrooms, which Patty knows is my favorite bathroom because it still plays the OG Imagination Pavilion loop. So I'm super excited. Again, I think that's going to be getting me through the end there. I would imagine that Figment will also be a character out there, which again makes me excited. I imagine that we'll be able to get the Walt picture in Epcot. So like I said, I think once I get to that point, there's a lot to look forward to, including finishing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think they're hitting the right Epcot notes for me.
I have to just point out, we are the podcast that absolutely knows each other's favorite bathrooms. That is what we do.
Do I have a favorite bathroom?
You don't have one. Yeah, no, you don't.
Makes sense.
Because you don't go. Like, you stand outside and wait on me.
I do.
Well, but this, especially doing 13.1 miles, like I need to know where they are. So I specifically did my training around, here are the in-park bathrooms.
Where you can pop in and go. I understood completely. Okay, cool. Okay, so we've got training. Have you started packing, or at least do you have your list?
No, but it's going to be easier this time because, shock to everybody, the only Disney bounding I'm doing is on the course.
Okay.
If you had heard me talk a little bit about my training over the past couple of months, so over the summer, I broke my toe. And then early in the fall, I had COVID. So just a lot of things happened that my training got off to a rocky start, but especially with breaking my toe, I haven't really done anything other than tennis shoes for the last couple months. And a lot of my Disney bounds revolve around cute shoes. I am not doing anything to my feet until after the race. Tennis shoes only. And I have a pair of sandals that are very comfortable, but I was like, I need to make sure that I'm not doing anything, especially the couple days leading up to it, that's going to put me in any bad physical condition prior to the race. So
this so cute, Jane? Do you remember when we were like that?
No.
You are I'm sitting here going, I totally remember being like this, Theresa. This is exciting for me to watch this through your eyes.
I was I used to bring my food. I would be like, this is what I have to eat the night before because I know that agrees with my stomach. So I do remember some of it, but I also would never wear cute shoes to the park to begin with.
Well,
so that for me was well, that's cute. I always wear tennis shoes. I'm like, you absolutely can bound in Lululemon.
It's just it's just not what I have in my closet. I
understand.
My Disney bounding style is very so I'm I don't have as easily accessible.
It is Theresa style, whereas mine is lazy. Mine is as lazy as the Coast to Coast medal.
Well, like I said, even the shoes I wear, they're kids. So it's my park shoes are not bad shoes, but I do not want to do anything that will.
I understand.
I'm going into it, making sure I'm as comfortable as possible. I'm not doing as much park time.
Yeah.
During those days, I'm getting in on Thursday. So it's basically going to be going to Expo when I get in, going to Epcot to see Luminous, which I've heard very good things about compared to Harmonious. So
I just saw somebody on Twitter say, I finally saw Luminous. What a dog beep show. And I was like, oh.
I think if people who loved Harmonious are not enjoying Luminous from what I've seen. I think people who did not care for Harmonious like it a lot more. I feel it's just kind of brings it back to, if you liked Illuminations, it seems like it kind of ties it back to that or gives you those feelings a little bit. I've heard some of the music, have not watched anything, so I'm excited to see it. And then take it as easy as possible on Friday. I do have a park reservation, but we'll see if I use it because again, just kind of this is the least I've, outside of the race specific things, this is the least I have planned what my days are going to be at the parks. So my packing, I think, is going to be a lot easier because it's just going to be do I have my shoes and do I have them packed very tightly so nothing can get on them, nothing will happen to them? Do I have extra, things that I can run in case something were to happen? So I think packing is going to be, as long as I have everything specifically I need for race weekend and I'm going to write down all of those packing items, everything else will be fine.
Well, I have some packing lists. I will also include that in the show notes for anybody that's kind of wanting just to touch base and make sure that you included all the things that you think you should have, but you weren't sure that you should have or not. If you're listening and you're wondering, Theresa does her prep for this half marathon, the way that I used to do it as well is the day before the half marathon, I didn't do a whole lot. I did go to the parks, but I would go for like 2 hours. Again,
Mhm.
perks of being an annual pass holder. I could pop in, spend just a little bit of time on my feet, but then leave. Never spent a whole lot of time. I was literally back at my hotel, ready to like chill and be off my feet by 5 o'clock almost every single night before the race, just because I also had the Goldilocks of feet. Like they had to just be pampered. They had to be not too hard, not too soft. Like I had to just like take care of them so carefully. So all of this is like I'm shaking my head, going, "Oh yeah, that was me. That was me. That was me." So I totally get that. If that is you, you are not weird. You are not alone, or you are weird, but you found your people. If you're the opposite person who is like in the parks nonstop, it doesn't matter. You're doing dopey, but you've still got 5-day park hoppers and you're going to park all, more power to you. Like that's impressive. Like, listen, there's no wrong way to do this. However, for some of us, like it did make more sense to just kind of like chill out. Jane and I have already talked about her Disneyland trip. Her Disneyland trip isn't going to look like our typical Disneyland trip.
Correct. Yeah. We the way that I've always kind of done race weekends in Disneyland, I usually have a park ticket where I can enter on the days of the race. Like I'll enter on the day of the 5K or the 10K, but like Patty said, I would go in for maybe like an hour or two.
Mm-hmm.
This time we're actually not going in on the day of the 5K and the 10K. We're just going to kind of chill out both days. And that's really just, we will get enough walking, going to and from the corrals, doing the races, keeping ourselves a little bit loose. But overall, we really just want to save our legs so that we can have a great experience at the race on Sunday. More so myself, my friend Megan, who I travel with, she is like, I have to save my legs, but like she's also ridiculously fast. So like, girl, even if you slow down, you'll still be fine, which is a joke. Whereas like for me, I'm literally afraid my legs are going to fall off and then I'm going to like lose my status. Like, that's really why we're doing this whole thing. But
Got it.
But yeah, so I'm not doing parks at all on Friday and Saturday. So I will go in early. I'll do park days on Wednesday and Thursday. And then Sunday after the race, pending that I can get a reservation because those are no longer available. And then Monday we will do parks before we fly home. But I am also fortunate enough that I go to Disneyland a lot. So, if I don't ride something, I will catch it on the next go round.
Fair. So yeah, Patty, who's doing the 5 and the 10K, is going to be going to Disneyland by herself, apparently, because none of my friends are going to go into the parks with me. So if
I
you see
will
me,
on the other days.
the other day, if you get a reservation.
Yeah. I see how that's a problem.
See how that's a problem? Well, it'll be fine.
I did make reservation. I made a breakfast reservation the morning after the 10K to go to Storytellers so that we could have a leisurely breakfast, take some pictures with characters, do that kind of. It actually occurred to me that we were going to not have Kiki's, and I do not know how to function if I have to leave a race and not drive directly to Kiki's or the Cracker Barrel, which are the two places we love to have breakfast here. And I was like, what am I going to do?
It's going to be different. We're going to have to relearn everything at Disneyland again.
All over. And the other thing that made me sad was that I'm not staying at the Holiday Inn, which was a hotel that Patty and I stayed at a lot. It is the place where we were when they announced the Disneyland races coming back, and I screamed at the top of my lungs. And they always make my pancakes perfect with the extra hit of vanilla.
They do. Yeah, I'm not staying there this race either. I decided to splurge a little bit, and I'm doing Disneyland Hotel.
You bougie.
I am bougie. The older I get, listen, the more insufferable I am getting when it comes to things like this. But staying at Disneyland Hotel for this race. But yeah, I had that thought too. I was like, oh, Jane and I did all of the Disneyland halves when they were at Labor Day weekend together. Mm-hmm. And we always stayed at the Holiday Inn together. And so this is now Disneyland half in January, which used to be Star Wars. That used to be Tinkerbell. So anyway, it's crazy.
We did Star Wars the one year together.
We did do Star Wars.
Because I only did Star Wars once,
at one year.
But we did Star Wars that year together.
We did. And we stayed at our Holiday Inn.
At our Holiday Inn, yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing lots of Run Disney people and seeing the races back at Disneyland. I am doing a shorter trip in and out of Walt Disney World this time around. So I'm not going to be around for the half marathon, guys. So I'm just going to have to wish you luck from Virginia. I'll be cheering you on. Yeah, no, it's just such a quick turnaround to go back out to Disneyland. So I had to make some hard choices. And that was my hard choice this time, is I had to cut this one a little bit shorter. But we'll see you guys all. Is there anything else Run Disney weekends that we can tack on, or that you think we should cover real quick?
The only thing I'll add is big TBD regarding the Athletes with Disabilities situation for the Disneyland half, particularly because it is that first race weekend back, so nobody really knows what to expect. I do have a friend who is doing coast to coast, so my plan is to definitely check back in with her after she has done the Disneyland half, especially just to kind of hear how different is that experience. So we are going to be doing recaps of both race weekends afterwards.
Yes.
So I'll make sure that we have that information about what the experience was like. Because I'll be honest, in terms of, I am not convinced yet that I am going to register for the Halloween half for Disneyland. Partially because I'm like, I just don't know if I want to do another half again. But I was like, if I was going to coast, this would be the one time it's going to happen. But a lot of it will depend on what the AWD experience is like for people who I know who are going for this upcoming Disneyland race weekend. So
that's fair.
Talk to me after the next couple weeks and see where my mind is.
As we've pointed out, everything is different at Disneyland versus Walt Disney World. So it could be handled completely different there. Also, I mean, California just handles things like disabilities a lot different than Florida. So it could even
so
be,
like I said, no one's really sure what to expect, but we'll make sure that for anybody else who is listening to some of these, because you know that we are talking about these situations, we'll make sure that we get a recap of how it went if you're trying to figure that out as well for the upcoming Disneyland Halloween half.
Awesome. All right, Jane, where can they find us?
If you have any questions about Run Disney in general, or these race weekends, or you want to chat or just be excited, you can join us in our Facebook group, which is No Guilt Disney on Facebook, or you can email us at noguiltdisneypod@gmail.com.
And make sure you join us each week on the No Guilt Disney podcast, because as Patty likes to say,
it's no fun to fangirl the Wonka Bar Coast to Coast medal.
I knew it. I knew it was going to be that medal.
Listen,
it's not that bad.
Hideous.
But it's not good either. It's not good either.
Compared to the old ones. I would say if you had never seen the old style of medal, I think there would not be the same reaction.
I think so. I think the old style was just so much better.
Disney. I know we're done, but I have it in my head that I might bring my old Coast to Coast medal with me to Disneyland just to be a petty bee.
I'm throwing that into my suitcase. I'll bring one too if anybody wants to.
Right? I'm like, it's time for me to open up those totes and pull out whatever I can.
Exactly. Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.